feeling like shit, having remorse, feeling like you're a big piece of crap, feeling guilty, feeling embarrassed, feeling like you made the same mistake again and again and again, and it's killing you. Guys, in this video, that feeling, it fucking sucks. It fucks to live in a state of remorse and regret, hating yourself for bad habits and vices. In this video, I'm going to share a strategy on how you guys can break free of any vice that you have so that you no longer have to feel guilt, feel shame, feel embarrassed. And I got a framework right here that I'm going to take you guys through. So, with that being said, and at the very end of this video, I'm also going to share where I got this information so you guys can, as a bonus, so you guys can take the knowledge even further if you want to. All right. So, for those of you guys that are new, I'm Jeremiah Sullivan, and I came from a small town, and it was very normal in the small town that I grew up in for you just to like go to work at 5 o'clock. You were done for the day. You go home, you crack a beer, and you spend the rest of the evening like watching TV and drinking your beer. Like that was like the routine, right? The average normal routine. And the thing is like that cycle is a vice. That cycle is bad habits. That cycle is a cycle of drinking, whether you're getting tanked or whether you're just falling into a cycle of having your one beer. Like it doesn't matter how often you're doing it. A lot of times, like you're going to do a cycle like that. You're going to have a cycle of drinking and just in that doom loop. And you're going to hate yourself the next day. It's going to feel like misery and you're just going to hate your existence. And other times you're going to get so tanked, you're going to get so messed up that you're going to just completely hate your life afterwards and just beat yourself up a ton. And if you don't have a drinking problem, maybe, you have it's sex or porn or like drugs or caffeine or energy drinks. I don't know. No matter what, everybody typically has vices in their life that they have to break from. Okay. And so that was normal in the small town that I grew up in to have that cycle of drinking. And in the military, because I joined the military, I was a small town kid. And that was the regular life that we had in the small town that I grew up in. And then I joined the military. I changed my whole life. I was a quitter before I joined the military, but then I became a 1%er. Got into special operations, became an infantry commander. I led 130 soldiers, 130 infantry soldiers during my last deployment. My last assignment. Now today, I coach entrepreneurs. I coach working professionals. I help people level their lives up, help them get the body they want and the life that they want. So let's just dive in. To break a vice, man, I'll tell you what, where a lot of people mess up when it comes to breaking a vice is one, never admitting that they have a vice. What is a vice? A vice is something that you feel guilty about after you do it. You rationalize it. You justify it. For me, I was the guy that said I didn't have a drinking problem. I could stop anytime I wanted to, but I never stopped. Anytime I couldn't prove it. I couldn't prove I could do what I said I could. If you can't prove you can do what you say you can do, then it's not true. It's a lie. You're just so good at lying, you believe your own shit. If you can't say no to it, then you can't say no to it. If you don't do it, you can't. If you don't prove it, you can't do it. It's very true. So when it came to drinking for me, I was that guy that said I don't have a problem. I could stop anytime I wanted to, and maybe I would, not drink for one weekend, but 2 weekends, 3 weekends, 4 weekends go by, and it's like I'm drinking all those weekends. And so a vice is something that you feel guilty about that you can't break away from. It's an addiction, man. And for us high performers, us high achievers, we're addicts by nature. So it's very dangerous for us to get addicted to something that causes our destruction. So let's just get into it. Here's how you break the cycle. Here's how I broke the cycle of drinking, and how you guys can break the vices you have. The first thing is to understand. Let me bring this a little bit closer here. The first thing is to understand your habit loop. All right. So this right here, your habits work in cycles. This right here is the cue, which is the trigger that causes your habit to happen. That says trigger right there if you guys can't read it. And then sometimes your triggers are things like time. They're things like your emotions. So if you're dealing with stress, if you're dealing with loneliness, these emotions can trigger you into a negative habit. All right. And then down here, places and circumstances. Sometimes certain places can cause negative habits. Like you know, if you're at, maybe you go to your favorite restaurant and that triggers the negative habit of eating bullshit. But emotions are a big one. Feelings of loneliness, feelings of isolation, feelings of boredom. These negative emotions are triggers that put people into negative habits, and put them into their vices. So this cue, there's always going to be a cue in your habit ritual, okay, in your vice. The next thing that happens is the routine. You're going to go through the process of doing the habit, doing the vice, whether that's eating whether that's drinking, whether that's drugs, whether it's sex, whatever it is. You're going to go through the routine, and at the back end of the routine, there's a reward. Oh, that felt so good. But the problem is that when it's a vice, afterwards you feel remorse, you feel guilty, you feel horrible. Maybe it's a sexual thing, like you're a sex addict, and you just you do it again, and you feel horrible about letting yourself go. Or with me, it was drinking. After I drank, didn't matter if it was 1 beer or 10 beers or whatever. Afterwards, I felt like complete shit. So in order to break the vices that you have, a lot of people fuck up and they try to just stop the routine. They try to stop the actual act. Don't try to stop yourself in the act. Stop yourself before you get triggered or when you get triggered. So if you feel lonely, if you feel stressed, if there's a certain place that you go to or a certain like a certain emotion that you experience, like loneliness, when that loneliness or that emotion or that stress happens, your job is to study yourself and figure out what the cue is that's causing you to go into the negative vice. And when that happens and when you become aware of the cue, you're actually in control now, because it's too late once you're down here into the routine. So you got to figure out what your cues are and attack these cues. So if I'm feeling lonely, and I start feeling lonely, I need to realize that I'm at jeopardy for falling into my negative vice, my problem. And I need to get around positive people versus conforming to whatever the fuck it was or not conforming, but caving into the thing that I cave into. So how this looked in my life is that I started studying my cues. I pulled up a notepad on my phone. I started taking down notes. Every time I started drinking, I wrote down what the cue was. What was the cue? Well, it was this, at this date, January, whatever, I was going through some shit in my life. I was stressed out, and I got off work at 5 p.m. and I drove by the liquor store, and as I drove by the liquor store, I just went right inside. So my cues were 5 p.m., stress, and getting off work. That caused me to go in the grocery store. I went to the grocery store. I always went to the same aisle, got the same drinks. And so I'd get back to the house. I'd crack it open, crack the beer open, the liquor or the whatever it was, and I would drink it, and I would get that little reward. Well, the thing was, is once I started breaking this loop, this habit loop, I started changing the aisles that I went into. So I started adjusting the routine. So the cue happened. I go to the store, I started adjusting the routine. I swapped out from beer, I went to wine. I went from liquor to beer to wine, and then I actually swapped it out. I went to candy, and then I swapped that out and I went to steak. Like big fat steak and vegetables. And then when I went home, I still had the little bit of the ritual. I ate the steak, I got a little bit of the reward, I felt the reward, and the next day, the remorse. Every time I swapped one of these things out, the remorse was less and less and less. So once I figured out what my cues were, I knew where I was headed. Once I figured out that I was getting cued to fall into my vice, I knew where I was headed. So all I had to do was start swapping out the routine, swapping out the ritual. So the fastest path to success is to replace bad habits, bad vices, with positive ones. So I started swapping out these negative vices of drinking with candy, then steak, and big dinners. Now, the last thing that I have, once you get through this cycle, this took me some time. It took me a while to get through it. But the thing that I studied was the book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. You guys can check that book out. Really good book. But I applied everything that I learned in that book. And all I really focused on is identifying my cues, adjusting my rituals, and then over time I started feeling good about the habits that I was choosing, and I stopped feeling so remorseful. Okay? So this is a quick crash class on habit building. I hope it's useful for you guys. I know many of you guys are trying to be better, trying to remove bad habits from your life, break away from those vices. Identify your cues. Work on your rituals and your routines. Swap those out for better ones. And then you'll feel what the rewards that you'll get. If you feel remorse afterwards, you still got to adjust the routine. You still got to adjust the ritual and swap it out for something that makes you feel really fucking good. So you got to experiment with yourself. That's what I had to do. It wasn't an overnight thing for me, but the fastest path to success is to replace bad habits with good ones and just follow the habit loop like Charles Duhigg laid out in his book, The Power of Habit. Guys, if you like this video, comment down below, and then do me a favor, do me a solid, share it with a friend. If you know somebody that's trying to get in better shape, stop drinking, stop doing drugs. Maybe they have whatever issue that they have, whatever vice they have. Everybody needs this video. So send it to somebody that's working on themselves, that wants to replace their bad habits with good ones. We'll see you guys in the next video. Conquer all.